We, the jury, having found the defendant Glenn E. Bates guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of aggravated as charged in count 1 of the indictment, find the defendant Glenn E. Bates guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of causing the death of another.
Glenara Bates was born to Andrea Bradley and Glenn Bates in January 2013, and immediately she was placed in foster care in the same home where her 4 older half-siblings were already staying. In September 2013, a court ordered that the 5 children be returned to Bradley. According to Glenara's foster mother, Glenara weighed almost 20 pounds at the time. Now, in December 2014, Bradley took Glenara to Cincinnati Children's Hospital, where Glenara was admitted for poor weight gain, possible malnutrition, and failure to meet developmental milestones. At that time, Glenara was around 23 months and weighed 17 pounds. Dr. Brian Herbst, a physician, testified that when she was admitted, Glenara could stand supported but was unable to walk. After ruling out other conditions, the doctor diagnosed her with malnourishment caused by not taking in enough calories. Wow, they weren't even feeding her. He found no other signs of physical abuse. Glenara gained weight as she was fed at the hospital, and Bradley was counseled about the importance of proper nutrition. Glenara was released into Bradley's care approximately 10 days after she had been admitted to hospital. Now, on March 29, 2015, Bradley arrived at the emergency department holding Glenara, who was unresponsive. The physician who examined her, Dr. Strait, testified that Glenara had no signs of life. She was cold and pale. She had multiple scars and breakdown of the skin in multiple areas. She was totally emaciated and looked very small for what was her stated age. Despite many efforts to revive her, Glenara was pronounced dead at 1 p.m. At the time of her death, she weighed less than 14 pounds, and Dr. Strait observed that Glenara had a scar on her forehead, broken and missing teeth, and associated trauma to her gums. Clearly something was afoot. Bruises from head to toe, loop-shaped scarring on her legs, ulcerated lesions on her fingers, buttocks and back, and bite marks on her body. Bite marks? What? Based on her condition, the doctor suspected severe abuse. Glenara's half-sister testified at trial. She explained that after the children were reunited with Bradley, life was pretty good for Glenara for a few months until Bradley and Bates did a few things to her because they did not like her. The sister in court explained that they made Glenara sleep on the bathroom floor and did not feed her well, and that Bradley sometimes Glenara with a belt. She also said that she saw Bates Glenara and that Bates seemed angry whenever he did that. Stupid bastard. The half-sister testified that on March 28th, the day before she died, she saw Bates Glenara's head against the wall in the downstairs hallway of the house where they were living at the home. Why would you do that? Why on earth would you do that? She said that something had happened to make Bates angry and that he held Glenara by the legs and swung her against the wall. What the hell? According to the sister, Glenara cried at first and then suddenly became silent. Now, Hamilton County Deputy Coroner Dr. Jennifer Schott, who performed the autopsy, determined to a reasonable degree of medical certainty that the cause of death was battered child syndrome with acute and chronic intracranial hemorrhages and starvation. Wow, that makes my heart bleed. Not only do you not feed her, so she's hungry, tired, lethargic, you then smash her head against the wall. You fucking idiot. She detailed Glenara's extensive injuries for the jury through testimony and photographic evidence. She identified a number of conditions that had been caused by a combination of chronic stress, from malnutrition that reduced Glenara's chances of fighting off infections, poor hygiene, and general starvation. Wow, we're in the 21st century. Since when were people lacking food, in the Western world anyway, where they can't even fight off infections? What? Dr. Schott testified extensively about subdural and subarachnoid hemorrhages caused by blunt force trauma, which were fatal injuries to Glenara's head. She explained that the injuries of this type were usually the result of non accidental trauma and are markers of the underlying injury of the brain itself, which leads to death. Dr. Schott said that the subdural and subarachnoid hemorrhages were more consistent with Glenara being held by her legs and swung against a wall or a doorframe, as opposed to being dropped and landing on her head. She explained that it is rare for a short linear fall to result in a subdural hemorrhage. In fact, this is what she said. Listen to this. The type of injuries Glenara had are usually caused by rotational acceleration. Wow! And this occurs when a child is shaken or swung against an object. The autopsy also revealed a combination of lacerations, abrasions, and contusions to Glenara's head, and Dr. Shaw identified, for the jury, visible contusions at various stages of healing. She showed all the way around the head, including areas that are not typically contused in 2-year-olds. Now, according to Dr. Schott, the bruising and abrasions indicated that Glenara had received many strikes on the head, though she could not state with certainty how many. She told the jury that the sheer number of injuries in multiple different planes around the head is very suspicious for child abuse. Dr. Schott also identified numerous, countless, and overlapping scars all around Glenara's body, as well as scar patterns consistent with bite marks and blunt force trauma caused by impacts from a very thin item such as a belt. The autopsy indicated that Glenara had previously suffered a fractured rib bone that was starting to heal. Dr. Shaw stated that the location of the fractured bone made it highly suspicious for child abuse. Now, shortly after Glenara was pronounced dead, the hospital notified the police that there was evidence that Glenara had been abused. So, Detective Bill Hilbert viewed Glenara's body at the hospital that day and testified that because of her emaciated condition, his first impression was that he was looking at a 6-month-old baby. Police brought Bradley and Bates to the station to be questioned separately and interviewed Bradley regarding Glenara's injuries. That evening, Detective Hilbert and Detective Eric Karagulev conducted the first of 3 interviews with Bates after he voluntarily waived his Miranda rights. Big mistake, buddy. Now, Bates acknowledged that he had been staying with Bradley and the children for the previous week or 2. He said that on March the 29th, he woke up around noon and that while he was still in bed, Bradley told him that Glenara would not wake up. He then told Bradley to take her to the hospital. When asked about Glenara's specific injuries, Bates quickly admitted to noticing bruises on her legs and said that he had seen Bradley strike Glenara with a belt, but never with the buckle end. Well, as if that's okay. He denied having been home when Glenara was cut on her forehead, and he denied noticing the bruise covering the left side of her head. He told the detectives that Glenara had burned her thumb when she grabbed some hot ravioli, and that the swelling and cuts on her feet happened when she smashed her feet into a door or something. At one point, Bates said that he ain't laid no fingers on her and that Bradley caused all the injuries. Bates initially denied causing bite marks on Glenara's torso and limbs, but after one of the detectives told him that dental impressions would indicate who bit her, he admitted that he had bitten Glenara 2 or 3 times. Who in their right mind bites a child? Who bites anyone? Bates said that he sometimes would play Doggy Gonna Get You, which he said involved grabbing Glenara with his teeth like a dog and then shaking her. He told the officers that he probably bit her too hard, but that he was just playing and never intentionally meant to bite her enough to leave a mark. Bates eventually acknowledged the significant bruising on the left side of Glenara's head, but he still denied causing the injury or seeing Bradley do anything that would have caused it. Now, less than 1 hour after the first interview ended, the detectives conducted a second interview. They asked Bates whether it was possible that Glenara had fallen while he was holding her up by her feet, or while she was hanging from the ledge or a door frame. Bates denied that either scenario had occurred, saying that the only thing I can think is that when she was sitting in the chair, like when I sit in the chair, she fell. Again, that old chestnut. And he said that Glenara was just normal after she had fallen off the chair and hit her head. Later, during the second interview, Bates changed course and admitted to holding Glenara up by her feet and swinging her and stuff. But he continued to deny that she had been hurt when he did that. He also continued to deny having any knowledge of how Glenara had injured the left side of her head and insisted that he would have remembered if he dropped her. Detective Marcus McNeil then conducted Bates's third interview. Bates initially repeated what he had told detectives, again denying that he had dropped her on her head. But halfway through the interview, he changed course again and told Detective McNeil that, as Bradley had said during her police interview, he was holding her up and she fell, landing on her head. He explained that he was holding her up by her legs, up in the air, just playing with her, swinging her around, and then he claimed that because he was holding her from her feet and her shoes were on, the shoes fell off, like the shoes came off and she fell down. According to Bates, this incident happened about a week earlier and Glenara was fine afterward and was drinking, eating, playing. She wasn't eating, we know that. So, to conclude, Andrea Bradley pleaded no contest in the death of her 2-year-old daughter and was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Glenn himself was found guilty and convicted of aggravated murder, and he is currently on death row. I hate it when I read about starving children. Curse these mother